microphones, that'd be excellent. We will be recording the webinar as well, and we'll upload onto the Masterclass hub page after today. So if you do miss any of it or want to recommend anybody to listen to it, you're more than welcome to as well. The presentation will last for about 20 to 25 minutes with Tony, and we'll then follow with a short Q&A afterwards for around 10-15 minutes. So if you do have any burning questions or anything that does crop up in your mind as Tony goes along, please post them in the chat at the bottom, or raise your hand, and then we'll hopefully get round to as many people as we can at the end of it. Without further ado, I'll hand you over to Tony, Head of Disability and Inclusion for the IGF and President of EDGA. Tony.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the introduction. Apologies for not being able to use my screen. And that's because I live out here in the sticks in Portugal. Our internet's not very good, and we were just trying it just a couple of minutes before, and sometimes it kind of dropped out. So we're just going to use the presentation, and then at the end of that, and I'll come back just with the screen and we take it from there. So again, thanks for the introduction, and congratulations also to the CPG, because getting this out pretty quick. Aston, Tommy, and I know you've done a lot of work on this, and the education team, I'm sure you've also been very involved in making sure that you get these masterclass series up, and I'm sure it'll be very beneficial. Hopefully, I'll be able to add to that a little bit. I think before I start, I'd like to kind of give you a bit of full disclosure, really. Like most people, I'm at home and I'm in my office, and we have all the distractions of that. And for me, it's kind of normal. I've worked from home for quite a number of years, but I guess it's a bit of a unique situation for some people. So, as I said, full disclosure, I've been pretty lucky in my career. It's changed many times, and not always has it been by design. I've not sat down and thought, this is where I want to be in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. I kind of always stayed away from that kind of goal setting. So, a couple of observations, and for the first half of my career, I realised that I was what I would call a pie slicer. And when I say a pie slicer, that means I just wanted to get my piece of the market. And I viewed the pie as being finite. It's kind of there. I've got to get my bit. It's just not going to get any bigger. But certainly over the last 25 years there or thereabouts, I've kind of realised that I need to be a pie extender. I need to be somebody who looks at the pie, wonders why the pie is not bigger, and then do whatever I can do to try and grow the pie. And certainly that's what we do with EDGA, and that's what we've been doing a little bit with the IGF as well. A bigger pie means that everybody can benefit, and in EDGA, certainly, which used to be, by the way, used to be called the European Disabled Golf Association, we have that in our culture. The goal is simple. EDGA will not exist in a few years' time, and certainly if it does exist in any kind of shape, way or form, it will be very different from what it is now. So I guess when all leading organisations are doing what they should for disability, then there's no longer a need for EDGA, and we're on track to achieve this. Couple of beliefs. I believe that education is done to you and that learning is done by you, and learning is way better. I believe in mentors. I think they're very important. I think that you get the opportunity to see the problem through different eyes, and I've got the fortune to be a mentor to other people, and I can provide them with that different perspective, and I do that with half a dozen or a dozen businesses throughout the world. This session is based on my learnings over the last 50 years, and they're my learnings, and so some of them may not well be backed by any sort of evidence-based research, but they are my thoughts, my observations, my reflections, and for that I make no apology. You may agree with them or otherwise, but that's fine, it's your decision. So this is kind of where it started for me. This is Shore Hill Golf Club, and this is the golf club where I was first a junior member, and I started to play golf when I was 11 or 12, which for somebody who's the son of a golf professional, my father was the golf professional at Shore Hill, seems to be a little bit late. But nevertheless, it was the right time for me. I picked up the golf club at the right time. It was something I wanted to do. I was never pushed. And, I thank my dad for that. Not both my dad and my mum for that. But I remember that the golf club looked a lot like the town that we lived in. And a good percentage of the members worked in the local towns. The kids were from different schools. I knew quite a few of them from school football matches and that kind of thing. And that's what I felt at the time. But in retrospect, looking back, which is always a joy to be able to look back sometimes, I now know that the members didn't really look like the citizens of the town, as only a fraction of the local demographic was really part of the club. There was a lot of other people that were in the town that didn't have options to be able to get involved in the game. I remember this, it was 50 years or so ago. And so perhaps we've learned something, and maybe we're a bit different, or maybe not. Let's just see. So let's get something very clear about the game. We're brainwashed into believing that golf is unique in its possibility for a lifetime participant engagement. And to be absolutely honest, it's not true. Golf isn't unique. We've all seen older runners, older swimmers, older cyclists. And when it comes to ball games, veteran tennis, table tennis, and even walking football, they're all thriving. So in reality, what does golf have that's different? And there's three significant points of difference that I see. The first is the opportunity to control our own ball. We just need to simply take a club, strike a ball to a target that's in on or above the ground. The second is that we're free to choose how we engage with the game. We can practice the activity of golf alone, or we can do it with other people. We can do it with friends, colleagues, acquaintances, or even strangers. And finally, the ethos of golf is that we all play together, young and old, male and female, learners and proficient players, amateurs and professionals, able-bodied and disabled. So if you type isolation right now into Google, 400, I did it a few minutes ago, 405 million hits came up in half a second. It has become one of the most searched words over recent weeks. So for a few minutes, let's isolate the game from the industry because they're two different things. So first we'll think about the game. I think we can all agree that the game cannot know who's swinging the golf club and it cannot know who's hitting the ball. So we can concentrate on the tenets of the game. So I'm going to mention 4 points, and they're all backed up by a large body of peer-reviewed academic literature. So almost everyone can agree that spending a sustained period of time in nature is good for our well-being. We can also agree that getting fresh air, safe sun exposure, and exercise is good for our health. Having work or recreation that challenges us is good for our psychological health, and being with other people is good for our social well-being. And for a percentage of the world's population, these 4 benefits are more important than ever.
What do I like about golf? Like a mirror of life. I do absolutely get excited about playing golf because you can measure yourself against yourself, and that's completely different with tennis or with table tennis because you measure yourself against an opponent. It's like a therapy, but it doesn't feel like a therapy because you're playing a game. The challenge is the rotation because I don't have any core stability. I lose 14 shots, a shot on a par 4, a shot on a par 5 with the length. You're here on a fantastic piece of nature. You find yourself confronting this piece of nature and trying to get the best out of you. The level of play has grown big time over the last couple of years.
By the way, that was the first take. She knocked that in first time. It was in a tournament, by the way. So based on that, so what's wrong with the game? So most surveys come up with the same points, and we've seen these surveys time after time after time. So in no particular order, these are the things that commonly come up. We're told that the game takes too long. We're told that the game is expensive. We're told that it's difficult to play, and we're told that it's democratic enough. Now, if these reasons are true, and I guess we've got to go with the research, then can any of these be changed by the game itself? I don't think so. Remember, the game doesn't know who's swinging the golf club, but the industry does. And it needs to know the people that are playing the game better, and the people that might want to play the game. It needs to know them better. So the industry can certainly change these 4 points, as I mentioned just a second ago. The industry could reduce the length of the golf courses that we play, which will make it more enjoyable for the majority. It will require less land, less maintenance, and so on. And for some of you, I've already spoken to you about how we could perhaps do that. The industry could reduce the number of holes that we play commonly. And after all, golf has got a history of both shorter courses and courses with a varied number of holes. It's relatively recent that 18 holes became the standard. The industry could increase the hole size for learner players, just for learner players, to give them an opportunity to enjoy the game a little bit more. Coaches could return to helping people to play the game rather than teaching the techniques to swing a golf club. The rule makers, they state that we cannot use more than 14 clubs, not that we have to use 14 clubs. So less clubs could reduce equipment costs, less clubs could mean smaller golf bags, and so perhaps reduce the number of people who need to use a trolley or a buggy. And then we come to the big one, the one that people really don't like to talk about too much, and that's inclusion. So if you take a look at this big ball here on the left-hand side, this represents the community. It's full of different genders, ages, races, religions, abilities, socioeconomic backgrounds, sexual orientations, and many others. The small one in the middle, or where it says golf club, the typical golf club here is represented, and yes, it is a community, but in reality, it's like the golf club that I was a junior member at, primarily made up of people like me. The club had various groups, or should we call them cliques, the Monday morning seniors, the Tuesday women, the Wednesday afternoon roll-up, Thursday seniors, and so on, so you get the picture. Now, if you look at the ball on the right-hand side, this is a model which scares a lot of clubs, as they cannot guarantee their membership income at the beginning of the year. The new structure challenges the economic model that most clubs operate under, and so therefore something that is pushed to one side. This particular model means that this is where the course is the main attraction, and small groups of players come to use it. The group's in its own community. It doesn't need to be socialised into the club, as it's already socialised to one another. That group will be flexible, and they'll go wherever they get the best offer. I didn't say the cheapest offer here, by the way. I said the best offer. So the community has an allegiance to itself rather than to the club. And the golf clubs will soon then realise that the golf club needs to look more like their community. And yes, the golf club needs to be part of the community. After the current crisis is over, I don't think we should simply get back to normality. Normality as being defined by what we've always done. I think we should create a new normality. And the golf industry could, to some degree, sit back, because the older member who has some savings or perhaps a pension may, and I do say may, not be quite as badly affected economically as perhaps some others. But many people will be suffering. And so now's the time to take affirmative action for what we want our industry to look like. Golf clubs will face greater legislation and public scrutiny to be more inclusive. And the aim of inclusion is pretty straightforward, and this is a kind of a definition which I will read. The aim of inclusion is to embrace all people, irrespective of race, gender, disability, medical, or other needs, Inclusion is about giving equal access, equal opportunities, and removing discrimination. End of quote. So the industry must take a long, hard look at itself, and it's got to try and figure out, how do they want people to be able to consume the game? Who is the customer? Shouldn't we be trying to satisfy their needs, and shouldn't we be trying to deliver more than they expect? The industry, which we're all a part of, must put the customer needs and wants first. And their wishes, the wishes of the industry, can only be satisfied if our customers are happy to return again and again and to bring other people. And it's the growth of nomad golfers, which is so big, and it's obvious for anybody who's looking, that a significant percentage of golfers are turning their backs on traditional golf club membership. They're not turning their back on the game. They now favour a different kind of membership, and that is a membership of community of practice. So why is that? So the world has definitely changed over the last few years, probably the last 10 years or so, and will have changed even more over the last 10 weeks. The growth of commitment-free consumers has been steadily growing over the last few years. And even though it's been driven primarily by millennials and Generation Z customers, all demographics are now renting. And they're renting their life. So rented homes, rented cars, rented mobiles, they've all been around for years. But relatively more recent, we've had rented entertainment. So music, I rent my music, I rent my films, I rent my sports channel. We rent our sports equipment for cycling, water sports, outdoor activities, if you like, gym access even, tennis courts, and even access, as we know, to golf courses. People just rent by buying a green thing. Even furniture and clothes are now on the rental menu. So how long before we rent golf clubs instead of owning them? It will happen. So why has the rental industry grown? We need to have a look. So smaller living spaces, lack of job security, more concentration in cities, and so again, that gives that smaller living space. Faster turnover of new models, you can't keep up with the new things that are out there. Greater flexibility to try new activities, but without a high upfront cost. And these are just some of a multitude of reasons that we've got. Renters prefer the flexibility to pay for their consumption monthly and with an easy opt-out. It doesn't seem to me that that sounds much like golf. So we have to put the golfer first, and we need to create a better map, as the map that we're using is no longer relevant to the huge proportion of the population. So it brings us to Maslow. Knew it'd get academic at some point, but it's not really very academic when you look at it. Somewhere golf fits into that group, and commonly most golfers have established some kind of control in their lower levels of the model. And it's common to find a higher percentage of golfers perhaps at level 4 or above, and that would be the green area that you see on the screen, green or blue. But the last few weeks has probably changed this order and may require our members to re-establish control at a lower level. So at least in the short to medium term, people may well be going back down to some of those other things below, which they need to deal with in order to be able to get back to some kind of lifestyle that they had before. Golf, therefore, must be aware of this, because a correction to the marketplace will inevitably be required. We traditionally think the hierarchy just builds, and it doesn't. In fact, it's transient, and as such, it's much more like life. And as we know, especially now, no one can actually know what tomorrow is going to bring. So golf will need to reach down to assist some of our customers who have had a more pressing time than they've had for a period of time. And certainly reading the green and finding the fairway is not going to be high on their priority list. So esteem, it's an interesting point, actually. That's the green one there, esteem. It's an interesting point because it can take years to build, but it can be lost in a heartbeat. And so this is an area that I look at on a regular basis and extensively in the work that I do. If you look at the two symbols, one on the left-hand side is the international symbol for disability. It can be found pretty much everywhere that you go. The problem is the vast majority of people don't look like this that are disabled. In fact, they look more like the symbol on the right, in some cases with differences in the limbs, or in things that we cannot see. The number of unseen disabilities is ever increasing and at a faster pace than ever before. 15% of the world is disabled, and they come in all shapes and sizes. And think about that number, that's 1 in 7 people. Just think about 7 people that you know. There's a pretty good chance that one of them has got a disability. And if you go, oh, I'm sure I don't know anybody who's got a disability. Well, just have a little think and you might be surprised. I did say that quite a lot of the disabilities, not quite a lot, a big percentage of disabilities are unseen. You've got to imagine that disability is democratic. It doesn't really care. It can strike anybody at any time. You can fall off a curbstone and you can break your leg. And that break then may get septicemia, and then before you know it, you've lost your leg. Somebody else falls off the same paving stone, twists their ankle, and 3 or 4 weeks later they're back doing what they do. So disability is pretty democratic. And there's going to be somebody who's sat during the course of this presentation, somebody's been sat in a doctor's office and they've received a diagnosis of an incurable condition, one that will affect every part of their life and also every part of their friends and family's life. A large percentage of the players that I've been fortunate enough to work with and that I've been fortunate enough to interview have faced such situations, and yet they've won that battle. And they're ready to face a new challenge. And that new challenge is the challenge of being a golfer. So right now, we think that times that we live in are tough. COVID-19 is definitely changing everything. But it'll pass, just like everything else has passed. And I'm blessed to be able to have got to know hundreds of golfers with disability over the last 7 years. And these players are part of the community. They're part of your community. And yet I'd be surprised to find any golf club where 15% of their membership has got a disability. It's a pretty sobering thought. Think about that one for a second. Almost every person with an acquired disability must try to re-establish their sense of identity. So let's hear from one of our players and let's see what golf means to Trivka.
In 2001, I was out racing my motorcycle and slid in a corner and had rails close to the road, crushed both my legs. I knew instantly that this one was gone because it was curled up in many different directions as it's supposed to be. Sport was my identity. And suddenly I lost my identity. The first couple of years was pretty tough. I do biathlon and cross-country skiing. So I just done with the Paralympic in Pyeongchang. So I just recently picked up my golf club, so it's a little bit rusty being here on the. I know I'm getting beat this year, but when I started in skiing, that was the same story. But I became a world champion there, so it's possible here in golf as well. So it's been a great ride after the accident, actually. Got a lot of great opportunities. So I'm happy.
Personally, I've been a lifelong learner since I can ever remember. In part, I developed this thirst of knowledge from my dad. He was always questioning, he was always listening to tapes and reading. And today, perhaps I'm on the steepest learning curve of my life. Learning definitely can come in many different ways. It's been said that you'll be the same in 5 years' time, except for the people that you meet and the books that you read. And perhaps that's a little bit simplistic, but in my opinion, it's not too far away from the truth. Over the last 7 years, I've had lots of time that I could invest with players with disability. And I've learned so much that it's been life-changing. I mentioned earlier that golf coaches must return to helping people to play the game rather than teaching the techniques to swing a golf club. So many coaches need to flip their thinking. The key here is to coach the person, which is way more demanding than fixing a grip. I firmly believe that coaching golfers with a disability should be at the very beginning of every coach's learning cycle. Equally, I believe that every established coaching, that if they coach a golfer with a disability, it will make them a better coach because it will challenge every single belief that you have about the game. It certainly did for me. Now, some of my beliefs made the cut and some didn't. And that's good because that's how we learn. I've got another small film to show you.
Normal people, if the brain just phones the legs to tell them, yeah, walk like this, do it like this, and I don't have a phone. I have to learn to my brain how to walk, but that doesn't take 2 years. That takes maybe never. When I'm on the golf course, I don't feel disabled. In a golf course, I just see in front of me. I don't see down or I don't see behind me. I just see the hole and that's it. I don't feel disabled. My mom is my first hero. I think without her, I couldn't be here today. My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister. I want to beat Tiger Woods. That's my dream.
So your challenge, if you choose to accept it, and by the way, Adam plays off one handicap. He's one of the bright young stars that we've got, 21 years of age. So your challenge, if you choose to accept it, think about your existing customers and how they'll come out of the current situation. Many will have to re-establish their lives and some may need a different offer. You may need to grow some long arms and reach out to them and also to others. You can find new people. Just explore your community, reach out to the 15% of it that's disabled. 40% of people with disability state that they want more sport in their lives. So let's bring it to them. Make your business and your golf club an inclusive part of the community. It'll be good for you, it'll be good for the club, and it'll be good for the game. You can choose to do what you've always done, or if you like, you can continue to do the same. You can pivot the golf industry for the better by fulfilling the philosophy that golf can be one of the most inclusive games of all. It would be wrong for me to finish this presentation without allowing some of our players to show you what they can do. It's a very short video, and after that then, all I would say is I thank you very much for your time and look forward to any questions.
We're just people with disabilities, really. That's all we are. We want the rest to treat us like we're Spotman.
I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I like it. I don't see any problems with having a half arm.
The disability, they got it, but they don't want to talk about it.
I'm paraplegic, I don't feel my half body. Without
Okay.
Okay, I think are we good to go for a Q&A, Tony?
As you please, if there's any questions,
Perfect.
I'm happy to answer them with pleasure.
Okay, thank you everyone for listening. If you do have any questions for Tony, please post them in the chat and I'll read them out to him and we'll get through as many as we can. I'll begin the first one just while we're waiting for people. Tony, there's obviously a lot of PGA pros in here that'll be listening right now. From your experience, what are the common practical challenges you have seen at golf clubs that restricts inclusion, particularly people with a disability? And how could PGA pros listening to this right now go away and maybe play a key role in overcoming those barriers?
I think there's two things there. You've got the built environment, which you can do something about quite easily. So, make sure that the place is available for people to be able to go there. So, looking at steps, looking at access, looking at facilities where people can get to the golf course or even get to the driving range is a pretty good start. So that's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And by the way, for most countries, that's part of the normal legislation that they've got. And more of that will come in. So it's not a question of it's now, it's a question of more of that will happen over the next 2 to 3 years. That, I think, is easy. It's a simple budgeting exercise. It's a simple, just get somebody down there with disability who can help you out to understand what it's all about, and you can do that. The harder thing is to change the mindset of either the directors or the board of directors or the management team to say, look, somebody with a disability can come to our golf course and play, and it's no big deal. It's just another person that's going to play. And certainly, I think many times in what we see and what we experience when we do the clinics around the world, really, is that oftentimes there's this kind of, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to approach people with disability. They're kind of walking on eggshells, frightened of saying the wrong thing. Well, you can take it from me. All the people that I've come across over the last 7 or 8 years, they're made of tough stuff. And so just because you say the wrong thing, that's not going to affect them at all.
Okay, great. I've got a question from Vita. How can we change the mindset of the golf industry to be more inclusive? So you mentioned about that. Is there a specific initiatives or organisations? What roles do we need to have in place to try and change that mindset you mentioned?
I think if you just simply look at it as a business, I mean, bearing in mind, I didn't get involved with EDGA because of a business. I do it as a volunteer. Yes, I now work in disability golf, but I'm a volunteer for EDGA. So it was nothing to do with business as far as I was concerned. But if you look at it as a business, it doesn't really matter who paid. Again, the golf course doesn't know who's paid, the £500 membership or the €500 membership. It's just another person. It doesn't matter whether that person's disabled or otherwise. So I think we have to understand that there's this massive market out there, 15% of the world is disabled. And so we have to bring that to the attention of the directors, of the managers, of the board of directors to say, look, it's not a big deal. Because of the symbol that I showed you earlier, which is the person in the wheelchair, when you say to somebody about disability, the first thing in their head is, it's somebody in a wheelchair. And the reality is it's a very small percentage that's like that. And so we changed the wording from disabled golf to golfers with disability simply because the first word always defines the second. So if we put golf first, we think of a golfer. And then if we put disabled after it, we think, what's the disability? Whereas if we put disabled first, we think of the disability and we automatically think of that symbol of somebody in a wheelchair. So EDGA itself does a lot. The IGF now do a lot. The RNA do a lot. And then CPG starting to do some stuff as well with that. And there's some of the PGAs around the world that are getting involved in this space. And they need to get involved in this space sooner rather than later. Because if they're not careful, they'll be made to do this. Not because of EDGA, not because of the IGF, because legislation in their governments will make them do it. So better to be proactive and be on the front foot. So these kind of films that I've shown here, we've got plenty of those kind of films, we've got plenty of materials, plenty of programs that people can use, federations use, even PGAs use them, and get that notice out, that just get that awareness grown.
Excellent. I hope that answered your question, Vita. I've got a couple of questions that could probably be tied into one from Jose and Darko. Jose asked, what kind of initiatives would you recommend a golf club to start opening more to people with disabilities? And that leads sort of onto Darko's as well. Should there be something related to price, perhaps special prices for people with disabilities?
Well, again, two things here is that we can look at the first part is that the easiest thing that any PGA professional can do and you don't need the management to allow you to do this, is just go and have a little look. You can Google it, you put it in your browser 10 minutes after we finish, and go and have a look for what associations there are with people with disability within your catchment area, let's say 25 kilometres away from your golf club. So who's there? That's the first thing to do. Then go and speak to them, and then go and ask them and say, look, would you like the folks here to have an opportunity to be able to give golf a try? And of course, the beauty about soft golf that we've got now, we can do that in their gym, we can do it in their car park, we can do it wherever they like. Give them a try. Some people will like it and some people will not, and that's absolutely fine. From there, then those that do, you can start to bring them to the golf course, get them on the driving range, let them understand, let them see what's going on, and then you can take it from there. So that's pretty straightforward. Special prices, I'm not too sure that you need to do special prices because, again, there's this kind of wrong mentality. And yes, look, without a shadow of a doubt, some people are disabled and disadvantaged because, of course, they do not have the opportunity for some of the employment, perhaps, that other people do because of their disability. But that's a broad brushstroke. Everybody should think, oh, somebody with disability, the poor. That's not the truth. The truth of the matter is that, as I mentioned earlier, disability is democratic. And so therefore, people that have got their own companies, people that are working in high positions, politics, blah, 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 blah. President of the United States a few years ago was disabled. So, every single person has disability on their doorstep. And so don't think that because it's for disabled, it has to be cheaper. Now, you can do that or you can't, but that's a business decision that you have to make. It's not something that you have to do.
Okay, great. I think the group makes a point about there's occasions where people who perhaps may be confined to a wheelchair, for example, who are reliant on a carer, is maybe unable to bring that person to coaching after a few sessions. Is there a role that a PGA Pro has to play, not just mentoring the student, but also building a relationship with their carer as well?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we see, which is really, really interesting, is that, and if we take the case of a genetic disability, so somebody who's born with a disability, the child oftentimes brings parents and family members to the golf. Normally, what we would see is that a parent would take their child to the golf. They would introduce their child to golf. Actually, in disability, it's the opposite way around. So carers, parents, family members are all brought to the game because the individual wants to be able to play the game. So definitely creating a relationship with the social structure that is around the athlete is really, really important. And it's also beneficial for the golf club as well. But again, very much as you would do as a coach, any coach would do this. If you had a player in front of you that needed a physiotherapist, most likely you would recommend a physiotherapist, or most likely you would go on the internet or you would go and do some research and figure out whether the most appropriate strength and conditioning coach is. Exactly the same as somebody with disability. So you've got somebody in front of you with disability, they need to get some transportation, they need some help, then get on the internet, have a little Google, and most likely you'll be able to find a local charity or a local service from the local health service that will be able to provide transportation or will be able to certainly help to create some kind of transportation back and forth to the golf.
Excellent. Just having a couple more. I've got one from Hanny. Is there an importance placed on equipment? So is there special equipment required in disability golf, and what sort of access do perhaps smaller countries have to this sort of thing, and whether that's special golf clubs or education or anything?
Well, if you look at equipment for somebody who's wearing a prosthetic leg or wearing a prosthetic arm, or even playing on just one leg or just one arm, golf club's the same. So there's no barrier. They just get hold of the golf club, they go swinging, and it's exactly the same as it would be for any other person. Certainly, when you get to a wheelchair, then it's a little bit more tricky. And the conventional wheelchair, then the player would sit to the side and then would swing to the side just to give it a go. Funnily enough, we're actually working with the University of Tralee right now to create a static chair that somebody that needs a wheelchair will be able to sit on a driving range to be able to try the game, and it will be very cheap, very inexpensive to be able to do. And we are going to gift that blueprint for any club or any federation or any PGA that wants to be able to do that. So that's a collaboration that we've got with Tralee University. And that will take that barrier away. Again, depends on the disability, but certainly for a blind player, again, nothing necessary. A deaf player, nothing necessary. Intellectual disability, nothing necessary in terms of equipment. You will get some people that have got hand impairments, and of course then fatter grips, but you would do that for an older person who's got arthritis in the fingers. So from an equipment standpoint, no big deal. Short arms, that would be for camellia or something similar to that. Thalidomide, then those players will require a longer golf club. But it's very rare that you have that. And again, very easy to solve with any of the manufacturers to be able to do that. There really is, the only barriers that are there are really self-imposed barriers in our head to go, well, there must be a problem. Well, there isn't. It's pretty straightforward. Yes, you've got to take care to make sure that the facilities that you're going to put the players on are suitable. But other than that, that's fine.
Okay, fantastic. We've got time for a couple more questions. We've got one from Stephen Yubb. With a large percentage of children with disabilities, how would you suggest engaging youth with disabilities into the game? So, I mean, my interpretation of that a little bit is there any differences in engaging juniors with disabilities compared to engaging juniors that are able-bodied?
Well, I think you've got some differences. The first difference is that dependent on the disability, and it is very dependent on the disability, you may have to take a little bit more care, for example, with people on the autistic spectrum, is a good example of that. Perhaps neurodevelopmental disabilities, perhaps intellectual disabilities. You have to take a little bit more care perhaps there. Some of the other disabilities where there's real problems, so I use an example of something like MS, multiple sclerosis. You would have to be very careful that somebody doesn't overheat, because they tend to overheat pretty quickly. So, but that would be just like, to be honest, for any qualified coach who really knows what they're doing, they'd be looking for these things anyway. And really, it's way better if you put these juniors inside of regular groups. So it's not something that you do separate, it's something that you do together. And the more that we sort of look at it and go, okay, we've got our kind of regular golf here, and then we've got our disability golf over here, that looks very much like the slide that I showed you earlier about a different click. And never do these clicks join each other. Far better off if you just look at it as a big community that all works together. I love the comments that they use down in Australia. They call it all abilities golf. And I'm not 100% certain it's the right thing for disability, but by the same token, it encapsulates beautifully what we should be all about. It's all abilities, everybody together, not separating people. I'm not sure if that's answered the question, because I wasn't 100% clear on the question, but if that person, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who it was, but whoever it is, if you want to send that question to me, or we can speak about it, no problem.
Fantastic. And then just to tie things off, Tony, for some pros who might feel inspired by this afterwards, what sort of resources would you urge them to go away and have a look at? Any particular websites or government programs, etc., that might be important?
Well, there'll be plenty of government programs. They'll all vary. We obviously deal around the world, so we're 31 member federations. So we go all the way from Argentina, South Africa, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, all over Europe, etc. So we're pretty well spread around. So all government legislation will be slightly different. So you will be able to get a lot of information from there. I think if you want to go to the EDGA website, website's a pretty good resource hub there. There's quite a lot of information there. If you want to just listen to a few of the stories to understand a little bit about how people got to where they are, there's a good resource there, which is the profile sections. There's lots of stories there, and pretty much you'll find somebody there that you'll go, oh yeah, I think my mate's like that, or I think my next door neighbour's a little bit in that way. So you'll start to recognise some disabilities easier. So that's also a good place to get resources. But again, feel free to contact us through the website, and if you need any help, then just give us a shout and we'll get back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tony, as well, for presenting. If you do have any other questions, please email them to me and I'll forward them on to Tony. I'm sure I'll be happy to answer any that are burning. Once again, thank you very much to you all for listening. We do have another webinar tomorrow, which is with Ian Peake. It's Your Professional Why, Identifying It and Achieving It. That's at 4 o'clock, Central East European Standard Time. So hopefully we'll see you all then. Once again, thank you very much and hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.